In this module, we are going to cover spirometry in clinical practice. You see, we will be talking about the indications of spirometry, the various spirometric parameters, what are the criteria for acceptability and reproducibility, what are the steps in the interpretation, the severity criteria, bronchodilator reversibility. Then we will share few case studies and also we will talk about interthoracic and extrathoracic obstruction. We all know the concept of lung function is not new, it is around 350 years old. The volume of the air which can be inhaled in a single deep breath, it was first measured by Borelli in 1679. Still we find that the lung function tests are not taken up by our practitioner colleagues. The spirometry detects COPD 10 to 15 years before the patient starts having breathlessness and consult a doctor for the first time. Let us see this case. This was a doctor, 47-year-old, practicing physician. He came to see the spirometry machine as he was buying it and he performed the test because the machine was there in the lab. He did not have any symptom, but yes, he was a smoker for last 17 years, smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The lung function test spirometry was done, and as you can see, the vital capacity was normal with a reduced FEV1 and FVC ratio, FE1 by FVC ratio, and diagnosed as obstructive airway disease. So again, this example tells us that we can diagnose obstructive airway disease at an early stage by doing spirometry when patient has no symptoms. Now let us see how PFT can help us, or in other words, the indications of spirometry or the lung functions. The PFT, the spirometry helps us in evaluation of the symptoms and signs of respiratory diseases, in diagnosis of obstructive or obstructive lung disease whenever we have lung diseases. It helps us to assess the severity and prognosis of the lung disorders. It objectively assesses the benefit of therapy, whether patient is getting relief or not. Then to assess the patient before surgery, whether thoracic surgery or upper abdominal surgery, it is important to get the lung function test done, whether patient is fit for surgery or not fit for surgery or a high risk for surgery. Then to screen the people at risk of pulmonary disease, sometimes they are working in professions where they are likely to have involvement of the lungs, so it is very important. Then to assess the severity for legal reasons, for medical legal purpose, when like in cases of pneumoconiosis. And also it helps to assess the patient in rehabilitation programs. We do it before, then we do it after the rehabilitation is done, whether patient is getting objective benefit or not. Then it also helps us in epidemiological surveys and derivation of the reference equations, so that we know what should be the normal PFT in this given population. We have broadly two types of spirometers. One are the volume sensing spirometers, where we record the volume and then volume of the air which patient is inhaling and exhaling, and we give the results. Second are the flow sensing spirometers, which measure the flow of the air in and out of the lungs at small intervals, and then we compute this to measure the volume of the air which is coming out and the rate at which volume is coming out. These are the examples of the various spirometers. The left one is flow based, the middle one is also flow based, and the right one is the volume based spirometer. The various parameters, when you see a report, you will find at least there are 15-20 parameters, but let me tell you, we just need these 4 or 5 parameters in most of the routine cases, and they are the forced vital capacity, FVC, forced expiratory volume in 1 second, that is FEV1, the ratio of FE1 to FVC, the peak expiratory flow rate called PFR, and the forced expiratory flow at 25 to 75% of vital capacity called FEF 25 to 75. We will come to them one by one. When we talk about the forced vital capacity, it is the maximum volume of air which can be exhaled forcibly after a full inspiration. So the patient takes a full breath in and then exhales out forcibly, and we measure the total volume. As you can see on the right side, after a deep breath in, he has exhaled out whatever total volume comes out, that is called forced vital capacity. The forced expiratory volume first second, that is FEV1, that is the maximum volume of the gas which can be exhaled during forced exhalation in the first second after full inspiration. So whatever volume comes out in the first second, that is called FEV1. So FEV1 tells us how fast the patient can exhale, and in obstructive lung disease, the FEV1 will be reduced. Normally, around 70 to 80% of the FVC can normally be exhaled during the first second in adults. And if the ratio is low, that indicates airway obstruction. That means this person cannot exhale more than 70 to 80% in the first second. That indicates presence of obstruction. We represent these spirometric values in two graphs. One is the volume time graph, where the volume is represented on the y-axis and the time is on the x-axis. As the patient goes on exhaling, we measure against time what volume is coming out. The some amount of volume will come in the first second, second in the second second, then third second, fourth second, and whatever is coming out in the first second, that is FEV1. Whatever is coming out the total volume where the plateau is reached, that is called forced vital capacity. The second representation is flow volume curve, where the flow is on the y-axis and the volume is on the x-axis. So, patient takes a deep breath in, that is lower curve, inspiratory curve, exhales out forcibly, the peak flow is reached called maximum expiratory flow, that is peak expiratory flow. Gradually the flow starts coming down and it touches 0. So, the total volume on the x-axis, what comes out is the forced vital capacity. Now, if you divide the forced vital capacity into 4 parts, the earlier is the 25% of vital capacity has been exhaled, then 50%, then 75%, and we measure flow at each time point. So, whatever flow is between 25 to 75% of vital capacity, that is called FV of 25 to 75. Now, what is the importance of FV of 25 to 75? It is a very sensitive measure for detecting the early airway obstruction and small airways before the FEV1 becomes abnormal. So, in case you are thinking of obstructive airway disease and you find the FEV1 by FVC ratio is borderline, then the FV of 25-75 it can be used to say that yes, obstruction might be present. So, it helps in detecting early small airway obstruction and as well as small airway obstruction. Now, next step comes how to perform this spirometry. Whenever we start performing spirometry, first we must rule out the contraindication, that there should not be any contraindication, and the common contraindications are hemoptysis of any origin, the pneumothorax, unstable cardiac status including the recent MI or pulmonary embolism, the thoracic abdominal cerebral aneurysms, the recent surgery of the eye, thorax or abdomen, or even acute severe asthma. Here we should not do the spirometry. Then calibration. You see, whenever we are measuring the lung functions of a patient, we must know whether patient has got 3 liters, the machine is measuring 3 liters or not. When we go to buy some vegetables, we want to ensure that if we are paying for 3 kg, we must get 3 kg vegetables. So, here we want to know whatever patient is exhaling, it is being measured correctly or not. So, we have 2 types of syringes, one is 1 liter, one is 3 liters. So, we fill the syringe and we push it to the spirometer, and the 3 liter syringe, once it is pushed, it must measure 3 liters. In case it is not, that means calibration is out of order. The machine will not be giving you the correct results. So, the calibration needs to be checked and corrected. And in good laboratories for spirometry, where the volume is say 20 to 30 tests per day, it should be done almost daily. Then the pre-test requirements. What should we do before the testing is done? We want the patient to be resting. We ask the patient to sit down for 5 minutes. Nowadays in the corporate culture, you know, everybody is in hurry, but no, we want the patient to take rest. It should be done preferably in sitting posture, and throughout the procedure he should remain sitting. In children, because they feel more comfortable, they can do it in standing position. We record the patient's age, height and gender for calculation of the normal predicted values. I will come to that later. If somebody is using dentures, you should do spirometry with dentures in, and for kyphotic patients, we can measure the arm span to see the height of the patient. Now, for measuring the various parameters, we ask the patient to take deep breath in as much as possible he can do. It should be rapid and full lung should be filled, and then we ask him to blow out into the equipment as hard and as fast as possible until he cannot do any more. And it must be exhaled at least for 6 seconds and even up to 15 seconds, but after 15 seconds we should ask him to stop, because some patient we find they go to syncope, but he must exhale for 6 seconds. And you know, spirometry is effort based test. So, it is always necessary to demonstrate to him how it is to be done. We must, as I already said, take full deep inspiration and must exhale forcibly and completely. So, after checking now, after the spirometry has been done, next step is to do the interpretation. So, the first step, as I already said, is to check the calibration, whether the machine is correctly calibrated or not. Second is we must check the shape of the curve, whether the shape is acceptable or not, because it being an effort based test, unless the shape of the test effort which has been done is acceptable and correct, it is no use analyzing that result. We will see that. you see what are the criteria for a acceptability. That means the test has been done in an acceptable manner. First of all, there should be a deep maximal inspiratory effort before the exhalation starts. There should not be any hesitation to start, and there should be rapid rise till the peak flow is reached. Third is the maximum effort should be maintained throughout the procedure. There should not be any cessation of flow prematurely, and there should not be any coughing once patient is blowing out. Exhalation time should be 6 seconds, and there should not be any leak. So, this is the criteria for a acceptable test. In case all these are there, then we say yes, the test is acceptable. Then in practice you can see all this kind of thing. In the upper row, if you see, the first one is acceptable, the second one in the upper row, it's a some maximal effort, as you can see from the curve. In the third, you find the patient is not at the total lung capacity, so whatever he is exhaling will be less. In the fourth, patient has coughed. In the lower row, if you see the first one from the left, the start was not rapid, so the FEV1 will be low, the peak expiratory flow rate will be low. In the second, on the lower row, the patient has stopped prematurely. This is very common in children, leading to falsely low FVC. In the third, we find there is inspiration is low. The inspiration is not done correctly, of course the exhalatory volume will be low. Then in the fourth one, we find the tongue has occluded. So again, this is not an effort based test. So in all these 7 which I have discussed, we will say no, test is not acceptable, we need to repeat it. This is an example how the early termination can affect. The patient has taken deep breath, exhaled, and during exhalation stops prematurely. So, you will find on the x-axis the volume which will be getting recording will be less. So, you will have falsely low forced vital capacity. Now, after the calibration has been checked and we have checked that yes, the effort is acceptable, the curve is acceptable, the third step is we need to check the reproducibility. Now, what is reproducibility? Suppose somebody does the test and you find vital capacity is 3 liters. Next effort acceptable 3.5 liters. Next test 4 liters. Which one will you take? Yes, you might say 4 liters. No. How do you know the next will not be 4.5 liters? So, we should keep on doing it till we have 3 acceptable tests, and the best and the next best should be within 150 ml. So, that is the criteria for a acceptable test, that the largest 2 FVC should be within 150 ml of each other, and even the largest 2 FEV1 should be within 150 ml of each other. Then we say okay, now this is reproducible test. Even if patient does it in the same laboratory another time or goes to some other lab and does, you will have the similar results. So, it is very essential to have acceptable test as well as the test which is reproducible. Of course, when there is a restrictive lung disease, instead of 150 ml we take the criteria as 100 ml when the vital capacity is less than 1 liter. Now, if you look at these, multiple attempts have been done, and if you, this little, I know this you may not be able to see it, but all the vital capacity and the FEV1, they are within 150 ml of each other. So, that means they are reproducible. Now, let us see this example, whatever we have learned so far. So, this was a case of bronchial asthma, came to the lab for lung functions. So, do not jump at the values which we have the habit of jumping at the values, no. First see the curve, is it acceptable? No, there is coughing. So, we say no, this test is not acceptable, we would like to repeat the test. Another example, this was a case of bronchial asthma, came to the lab. So, must see why a patient has been referred to me, whether interstitial lung or whether obstructive airway disease, whether preoperative, before you start doing the test, before you start analyzing the test. So, case of bronchial asthma comes to the lab, and what do you find here? Again, do not jump to the values, look at the curve. Is it okay? No. You find the flow volume curve, there is sudden cessation of flow, again on the volume time on the right side also, and you see the time exhaled is just 2.33 seconds. So, in obstructive airway disease, if patient exhaling only 2 seconds, what will happen? You will have vital capacity will be reduced, as I just showed you. FEV1 will be reduced, both are reduced and the ratio is normal, indicating the person is having restrictive lung disease. So, in case you do not look at the curve, do not ensure the patient has exhaled fully, you will have these kind of results. So, this asthma will be labeled as restrictive lung disease by the laboratory. Now, the next step after the calibration has been done, after you have done, you have checked that this test is acceptable and you ensure the reproducibility of the results. The next step is we must choose the correct normal reference values, because we are comparing the results of the patient with the normal reference values of that particular population from which the patient belongs to. We all know the PFT, the lung functions depend on age, height, sex and the race, and we must choose the correct reference values, predicted values, otherwise we will have wrong interpretation. And some of the laboratories, they use the European values and apply a correction factor of say 0.8 or 0.9. This is not a preferred option, it is not recommended, it should not be done. So as I said, using this less than 80% of the predicted value is not a preferred option, but most of the laboratories are using it. Now there is a concept of lower limit of normal. What is this? Lower limit of normal is anything which is below the 5th percentile for a given population. And how do you calculate 5th percentile is the mean predicted value minus 1.645 times the standard error of estimate. All these equations, they give along with that the standard error of estimate. So we can calculate for every person what is the lower limit of normal. Ideally speaking, the values below the lower limit of normal should be taken as abnormal. Now in India, within India we find the normal PFT values, they vary. The North Indians have the highest values, the South Indian have got the lowest values, that is the predicted values. So we will have to interpret with caution whenever we are interpreting the in a given person, whether if he belongs to North India, ideally speaking we should use the equations for the North India only. Now I'll give you one example. So this 30-year-old gentleman with a 1.6 meter height, asymptomatic, he went for a checkup in Delhi and they said that you are abnormal. Spirometry was done, the vital capacity was 3.1 liters, FEV1 was 2.4 liters and the ratio was 80%. So he belongs to Chennai and they use the North India parameters. So he was told that you have mild restriction, as you can see the first row. The second row he went back to Chennai, he did there the same parameter FVC 3.1 liter. It was reported as normal because they use the South Indian normal predicted values. In Mumbai, he was told that you have a borderline normal values. In Chandigarh, he went, okay, I will go to PGI Chandigarh to do it. And there he was told, no, you have rather moderate restriction, not even mild. And the other laboratories using the European standards, they also told him you have moderate restriction. Same person, same lung functions, but because they were using different predicted equations, you can see what can happen. So we must use the correct normal predicted values in case we don't want to make the similar mistakes. After the calibration has been done, the acceptability of the curve, the reproducibility of the curve has been checked, and we have chosen the correct reference values. The next important step is always do clinical correlation, whether patient has come to us with for preoperative evaluation, he has come to us for an interstitial lung disease or a bronchial asthma. It must be done so that it will help us in the analysis of the diagnosis of the patient. And the borderline values must be reported with caution. For example, somebody is a smoker and he comes to the lab and we do it and we find it is just near the lower limit of normal. Don't report it as normal. You say it is lower side of the normal range, because we want to warn to the patient that yes, your parameters are going down. We want to tell to his physician that your patient, although within normal range, but he has towards the lower side of the normal. So accordingly, in that case, we will report as lower side of normal. On the other hand, we are making predicted equation for a normal population and we find they are just below the lower limit of normal. Here we can say it is normal because we know he is healthy and he just come to make the predicted equation. So accordingly, it is very important to do the clinical correlation and reporting the borderline values with caution. Now, how to select the parameters? The lung functions have been done. You have the parameters with you. Suppose you have three curves A, B, C, all three are acceptable. So the largest FVC and the largest FEV1 should be selected, even if they belong to different curves. So suppose curve A has got the largest FVC and the curve C has got the largest FEV1. So we will choose FVC from curve A and FEV1 from curve C. On the other hand, for FE of 2575, we take the best curve. Best curve is defined as one having single curve having maximum value of FVC plus FEV1. Earlier, the softwares were using this criteria of a best curve and they were reporting FVC and FEV1 from a single best curve. But now, as per the ATS ERS guidelines, it has changed. Now, let us see what happens to the PFT parameters in obstructive, restrictive or the mixed disorders. You know, this common airway obstructive disorders are COPD, asthma, bronchiectasis, cystic fibrosis, etc. So let us compare the lungs with balloons. So upper one is a normal balloon with a vital capacity of 6 liters, FEV1 5 liters and the ratio of 83%. What happens in obstruction? The size of the balloon remains same and the neck is narrowed. So what will happen? the VC will remain same, and whatever is coming out in the first second, if you take a balloon and deflate it and you narrow the neck, it will take longer time. So, in the first second less will come out. So, FE1 will be reduced, and since FEV1 is reduced, the FE1 by FEC will also be reduced. So, what you will have, the vital capacity will be reported as normal, FEV1 will be low, and as well as FE1 by FEC will also be low. You can see from these curves, these are actual curves done by the patients. So, in a mild obstruction, this is slightly concave. As the obstruction becomes severe, it becomes more concave, and as it becomes further severe, the concavity is increased. This is in flow volume curve. Now, looking at the volume time curve, this is with the mild obstruction. With the moderate, it is getting flattened, and severe, it has got further flattened. So, looking at the curves also, you can say whether there is mild obstruction or there is a moderate or severe obstruction. Now, looking at the next step is to see what happens in restrictive disorders. These are the list of some of the causes, like pulmonary causes, fibrosing lung disease, pneumoconiosis, pulmonary edema, parenchymal lung tumors, etc. In extrapulmonary, you can have thoracic cage abnormalities, deformities, the obesity, pregnancy, neuromuscular disorders, fibrothorax. So, what happens in restrictive disorders? Again, the same example of the balloon. The upper one is normal balloon, like the lung, and the lower one is the lungs with a restrictive lung disease. So, here vital capacity will be reduced because the lungs have become smaller now. Similarly, the FE1 which is coming out in the first second, that will also be reduced proportionately, and the ratio will remain normal because the neck has narrowed proportionately. So, whatever is coming out in the first second, that will remain normal. So, if you do the lung functions, you will have vital capacity reduced, FEV1 reduced, both are reduced proportionately, and the ratio remains normal. Now, what will happen in the disorders where you have the mixed ventilated dysfunctions, like in bronchiectasis, in post-TB sequelae? Here the balloon has become smaller, plus the neck has become disproportionately smaller. It is much more small than for a proportion to the smallness in the lungs. So, what will happen? The vital capacity will be reduced because it is a mixed disorder. The FEV1 will be reduced, and the ratio will also be reduced. So, when you do the lung function, you will have vital capacity to be reduced, FEV1 to be reduced, and as well as the ratio is also reduced. If you put them together, in obstructive disorders, you will have vital capacity is normal, FEV1 is reduced, and the FE1 by FEC ratio is reduced. In restrictive disorders, you will have vital capacity as well as FEV1 are reduced, and the ratio remains normal because they are reduced proportionately. And in mixed disorders, the vital capacity, FEV1 as well as FE1 by FEC ratio, they are reduced. Now, there can be scenarios when due to severe obstruction or dynamic compression, the vital capacity is not normal. In obstructive disorders, it is reduced. They are shown here with the yellowing. So, in these disorders, how to differentiate between whether it is pure obstructive or it is a mixed disorder? Here you do the total lung capacity. In obstructive disorders, the total lung capacity will be normal. Restrictive, of course, this will be reduced, and mixed disorders, this will be reduced. Now, what are the steps in the interpretation? You have the values with you. So, the first thing after seeing the curve, as I already have explained to you, look at the ratio FE1 by FEC. If it is low, that means obstruction is present. So, the next step is, after the obstruction is present, is to have a look at the forced vital capacity. In case it is normal, we are dealing with a pure obstruction. In case you find the FE1 FEC ratio is low, that is obstruction, and the FEC is low, you will find the person is having mixed disorder. On the other hand, you can have FE1 by FEC ratio is normal, that means there is no obstruction. Then you do the vital capacity. If the vital capacity is also normal, that means there is no obstruction and there is no restriction. So, the person is having normal spirometry. On the other hand, if you have the FE1 FEC ratio is low, that means there is obstruction, and you find the vital capacity is low. So, this person has got the FE1 FEC ratio is normal, that means there is no obstruction, and the vital capacity is low, that means this person is having restrictive lung functions. So, if you combine all the four by looking at the FE1 by FEC ratio and looking at the FEC, you can classify the person as obstructive, mixed, restrictive, or a normal kind of lung functions. Let us see some examples. This is a case of bronchial asthma, is referred to the lab for the PFT. So, the first step again, as I explained, will be to look at the curve, not the values. The curve is acceptable. Second step, as I discussed, is look at the FEV1 by FVC ratio, absolute value, because here the first column is mean predicted value, the second column is the observed value of the patient, third is the percentage of predicted value. So, you find FEV1 FVC ratio, the absolute value is reduced, indicating there is an obstruction. Then have a look at the FVC, it is 92% of predicted normal, it is normal, and FEV1 as a percentage of predicted normal, it is reduced. So, here you are finding FVC is normal, FEV1 is reduced, and FEV1 by FVC ratio is reduced. So, this will be obstructive. Now, in this example, this was a case of silicosis, refer to the laboratory for lung functions. Again, do not jump at the values, look at the curve. Curve is acceptable, okay. Next step is look at the FEV1 by FVC ratio, that is normal. Look at the FVC, it is reduced, just 75% of predicted normal. FEV1 again 75% of predicted normal reduced. So, in this what we are finding, FVC reduced, FEV1 reduced, and the ratio is normal. So, this will be, yes, this will be pure restrictive lung disorders. Then look at this example, this case of bronchiectasis comes to the lab for PFT. Again, do not jump at the values, look at the curve, curve is acceptable. Look at the ratio, FEV1 by FVC ratio is reduced, just 35%. Look at the FVC, it is 55% of predicted normal, reduced. FEV1, just 24% of predicted normal, reduced. So, you are having FVC reduced, FEV1 reduced, and the ratio is also reduced. So, what will be your diagnosis? Yes, correct. This will be mixed kind of disorder. Now, next step is once you have diagnosed whether person is having obstruction, restriction or a mix, next is to assess the severity of obstruction or restriction. So, for severity, the first step is we look at the ratio FEV1 by FVC. It should be below lower limit of normal, then we say yes, obstruction is present. And then for severity, we do not say severity based on FEV1 by FVC ratio. We look at the FEV1 as a percentage of predicted normal. In case the FEV1 as a percentage of predicted normal is between more than 70% to 100%, we call it mild obstruction. If it is 60 to 69%, we call it moderate. 50 to 59, we call it moderately severe. 35 to 49, we call it severe, and less than 35 as very severe. For the purpose of ease, we combine moderate and moderately severe, and then the values are mild more than 70%, moderate 50 to 69, severe 35 to 49, like that. Let us see an example. So, case of bronchial asthma comes to the lab for checking. Again, do not look at the values, look at the graph first, graph is acceptable. Look at the ratio of FEV1 by FVC, it is reduced. FVC normal, FEV1 percentage predicted is reduced. So, FVC normal, FEV1 reduced, FEV1 by FVC ratio reduced. So, this is obstruction. Now, going for the severity, what do you see? You see FEV1 as a percentage of predicted normal. That is the third column. You see FEV1 as a percentage of predicted normal. Predicted normal was 3.53. Patient is having 2.44. So, he has 69% of predicted normal. So, this will be moderate obstruction. Now, in case of COPD, as per the GOLD guidelines, whatever I have told you so far, that is in general for any disease, whether it is asthma or any other airway disease, post-TB, bronchiectasis or COPDs. But for COPDs, for GOLD guidelines, somebody wants to follow the GOLD guidelines, they have a different criteria. That is, first they say the FEV1 FVC should be less than 70%. Step 2 is, again we see the FEV1 as a percentage of predicted normal. The GOLD one, that is mild, if FEV1 is more than 80%, we call it mild. If FEV1 is between 50 to less than 80% of predicted normal, it is moderate. Between 30 to less than 50%, it is severe, and less than 30% is called as very severe. Now, coming to the severity of restrictive lung disorders, ideally speaking, it should be based on the measurement of total lung capacity. But in spirometry labs, most of the time the lung volumes are not available. So, we base it on vital capacity measurements. If it is more than 70%, too low limit of normal, some labs take as 80%. So, that is called as mild. 60 to 69%, we label it as moderate restriction. 50 to 59, we take it as moderately severe. 35 to 49 as severe, and less than 35% as very severe. Here again, if we club the moderate and moderately severe, then it comes to mild more than 70% to low limit of normal, moderate 50 to 69, and so on. Let us see an example. Case of silicosis comes to the lab. Again, first look at the curve, not the values. Curve is acceptable. Next step, look at the ratio, that is normal. FEC is reduced, FEV1 is reduced. So the diagnosis will be, of course, pure restrictive lung disorders, because VC and FEV1 are reduced and the ratio is normal. Now looking at severity, what do you see in severity? That is the FVC as a percentage of predicted value. So the third column, 75% means that the predicted value was 4.3 liters, 3.5, and observed value is 3.25. So it is 75% of predicted normal. So this is mild restrictive lung functions. Now there is something called impairment of lung function. If you see these values, the various parameters, you find FEV1 is reduced in obstruction, restriction, as well as mixed disorders. So if you just measure the FEV1, you can talk about what is the impairment of lung functions. So nowadays it is said that instead of saying obstruction or restriction, you can even use the word as lung function impairment or severity of impairment. And the guideline for severity of impairment are the mild when it is more than 70% to lower limit of normal, the FEV1 as a percentage of predicted, that is used to grade the person as mild, moderate or severely impaired lung functions. For mild, more than 70% to less than lower limit of normal, moderate 60 to 69, moderately severe 50 to 59. So they are practically same as you see in the restrictive lung disorders, but this term is different, it's called impairment of lung functions. Now coming to the reversibility of airway obstruction, how to see it, how to interpret this. So for the process, you do the spirometry before and 15 minutes after administering the short-acting bronchodilators, that is salbutamol. So patient must stop the short-acting bronchodilators for 6 hours, long-acting bronchodilators for 12 hours, and theophylline for 24 hours. What you do, you do it before the giving any bronchodilator. Then you give 4 puffs of 100 microgram of salbutamol with a gap of 30 seconds using a metered dose inhaler, and then you measure it after 15 minutes. Or second option is you can even use ipratropium bromide. Again here you give 4 puffs of ipratropium bromide by metered dose inhaler, and you measure it after 30 minutes, because the onset of action we know is late compared to the short-acting bronchodilators. So here you are measuring it after 30 minutes. And when do you say reversibility is present is when you have increase in the FEV1 and or FVC. What people make a mistake is they are looking only at FEV1. No. Even if FVC is increased, it is taken as a reversibility criteria. So FEV1 and or FVC after bronchodilator, if there is increase of 12% and at least 200 ml. So both the criteria should be fulfilled. It should be more than 12%, it should be more than 200 ml. Then we call it that significant reversibility is present. Let us see an example. So again, the test has been done before and after bronchodilator. Again here don't see the values first, you see the graph. So the graph pre and post are acceptable. Then you see the pre and post. As you can see, on the left 3 columns are pre, the right 3 columns are post. So before the bronchodilator, FEV1 was 1.86. After bronchodilator, it became 2.39, almost increased by 500 ml, and the percentage change is 29%. So it is fulfilling both the criteria. It is more than 500 ml, it is more than 200 ml, and more than 12%. So significant reversibility is present. Now what happens in the central or upper airway obstructions? The peak expiratory flow rate may be severely effective. So if you take the ratio of FEV1 by peak expiratory flow and you find it is more than 8 ml per liter per minute, that means we must do the inspiratory and expiratory loops, we must have a look at them to rule out any central airway obstruction. In extrathoracic lesions, the maximum expiratory flow 50% that is reduced. What are fixed lesions in central and upper airway lesions? When you find there is a fall of the flow in inspiratory curve as well as the expiratory curve. And what are variable lesions? When you find the flow is reduced more either in the inspiratory loop or in the expiratory loop, one of the two, we call it a variable obstruction is present. So in this, what you are seeing, the inspiratory flow instead of being round, it is flattened. So this indicates there is a variable extrathoracic lesion. In this example, what you are seeing, the inspiratory loop is round, but the expiratory loop is flattened. This indicates that there is a variable intrathoracic obstruction, making the expiratory loop flattened. And in this, what you are finding, the inspiratory loop is flattened, the expiratory loop is flattened. So both the loops are flattened. So this is an example of a fixed airway obstruction. So, my dear friends, to conclude this discussion on the pulmonary function test, I would like to emphasize once again that we must use spirometry in all the pulmonary diseases. We must check before we start interpreting whether the curves are acceptable and they are reproducible or not. We should choose the proper predicted values, otherwise the interpretation can be wrong. We must do the correlation with the clinical observations. What is the clinical case that patient has come to us? As I already explained, the borderline values must be interpreted with caution. We must look at inspiratory curve as well as the expiratory loop to say whether there could be extrathoracic obstruction also. And we should carefully evaluate the reversibility, keeping in mind the criteria. Thank you.